Hi, guys, and welcome to the Decision Podcast. Today, we're exploring an extraordinary story of resilience, transformation, and self-discovery. My guest has lived a life marked by profound challenges and incredible turning points. From navigating the complexities of a troubled youth, surviving trauma, and breaking free from cycles of abuse and addiction, to ultimately finding her voice and reclaiming her power. Her journey is nothing short of remarkable. So here I am today with Miss Lauren. Welcome to the Decision Podcast. Thank you for coming.
Thank you so much, Tony. That was a beautifully written
Thank
intro.
you.
I'm like, okay, Tony.
Yes, we have to make sure that everybody has the proper intro because I feel like everyone that made a decision, they have a backstory, they have the current story, and they have whatever happened in the middle that may have been a little jumbled up that got them to where they are now. So I had to make sure of it. But I have to ask you, what is the decision that impacted your entire life?
My decision, all in all, was to stop drinking.
Yeah. So how did we get there before, you even reached recovery? Let's go into your childhood, how it all started. So can we hear a little bit about your childhood? What was your living situation like growing up with your parents? Did you grow up with a mom, with your dad? Both parents. How exactly did you become Lauren?
So let's take it back. I'm originally from Winston-Salem, North Carolina, which is, home of Wake Forest, R.J. Reynolds. It's not like a really big city, but it's not like a small town either, so it's kind of like in the middle. I was raised by a single mom. However, I did have, if you want to say like a stepdad or like a pseudo
Okay.
father stand-in type situation, which was, I want to say, very helpful because in one way I always kind of had like that father image in, what I'm saying, I don't want to say shadow, but it's kind of like I always had that type of I had that relationship.
Yeah.
However, I always knew it wasn't like traditional, like he didn't stay in the same house with us. You know what I'm saying? It was just, it's very different things. However, he would, pick me up from school and spend time with me and be at like different
What was like
functions.
your relationship like with him overall?
Overall, Mr. Miller was incredible. Like, he was a great person. I will say, towards the end of like my teen years, when I found out he was not my biological father, it brought up a lot of just different emotions because at that point in time, I'm young and I just felt lied to. Even though I feel like looking back, I'm able to realize that my mom and Mr. Miller are both people, and sometimes we make decisions, what I'm saying, to try and just, make things better for the situation. Yeah. Unfortunately, me living that and finding out he wasn't my dad, it just made me kind of look at my mom kind of funny as well as him. But overall, like, the childhood was wonderful. I went to a private Christian school. I went to like a lot of camps. I was very, very involved. Matter of fact, I had an incredible church life. I was very, very active. I was one of the first like youth Sunday school teachers in my church. I had
Oh, really? Okay.
a class of first graders, and for a long time things were very, very picturesque. It just seemed like it was just, I want to say the trajectory was just kind of like this.
It was going up. Yeah.
Yeah, and then I decided, like I said, I went to private Christian school. I loved Salem. There was nothing wrong with that. However, I feel like as being a Black woman, and at that time in like a small town in the South, I really yearned for that connection and like to be around others that looked like me, that celebrated the same things I celebrated, that their struggles were theirs as well. And so I longed to go to a school that was predominantly Black, and deciding to go to a predominantly Black high school became a good and I feel like it was a good and a bad thing. It was good because, I made some really cool connections and really got to get outside of myself. However, I feel like it also opened the door for just like not some of the best characters and just a lot of curiosity and kind of wandering to the left. And I really feel like this is when, my relationship with the Lord started to kind of falter, and I started kind of backsliding and not going to church as often, kind of doing like the holiday thing. And, it was just a really interesting turning point. But again, it's nothing I regret, but it was just one of those things.
So with you going to private school, well, at least your mother making sure you went to private school, because I want to kind of hear a little bit more about like Mr. Miller and that dynamic with you, your mom. Do you think your mother let Mr. Miller be like let you think that he was your father to protect you? I know you mentioned that you were very heavily in the church. Why do you think your mother did? Do you think that she did that because it was like frowned upon to like not be with your child's father? Like what exactly do you think, why do you think that came about, and why do you think, because you mentioned like this, the private school life, so I'm just trying to
I think
understand.
my mom, for
Yeah.
all intents and purposes, really wanted to provide and portray a really good, appearance of a nice home life.
Okay.
Mom, dad, daughter. I again, like I can honestly say, like I never really ever wanted for anything. Anything I ever wanted to kind of pursue was always pushed. And I will say, like my mom, like the relationship dynamic, it was cool. Like I said, Mr. Miller lived in like our hometown, so it was like it wasn't rare for me to like leave school,
Mhm.
with him, or like if my mom picked me up, we might go visit him. But again, like I said, he didn't really live there. But I know for my mom, she really just wanted to provide,
Yeah.
I guess, that appearance of some kind of normalcy, because again, like the school I was going to was predominantly white,
Yeah.
and I knew like my situation was drastically different than my classmates. But for the most part, like if it came up in conversation, like I did
So.
have a father figure, and like I
Mhm.
said, he would come to school events
Yeah.
and functions and that type of thing.
And you knew him since, because I'm trying to
I've known
understand.
him my whole, like
Oh,
again,
so since you were
my
a
whole life.
baby. Okay.
Like
So it was
it was
easy
to the point where
to
like
think
I
that.
haven't really, like you can't see it right now, but I have a really curled, textured curl pattern.
Mhm.
And my mom used to always joke like, you got your curls from your dad.
Oh.
And so again, like finding out he wasn't my biological father, it was just kind of like I can, again, because I'm human, I can appreciate the links that my mom went through. But again, like the
Yeah.
nuance, and because I'm human, it's like a lie is still a lie, and like kind of finding it out. Like I'm gonna just keep it real with you. It makes me look at you sideways.
Yeah.
Again, two
How
things
did
can be
that
true at the same time.
with when your mother, cause she told you that he was your, she told you.
No.
How did you find out?
So that's going to be a little bit, a little
That's
later on,
Okay. Okay.
during later in the story. I guess you
Yeah.
would say like later teen, because I
Yeah.
feel like one of the things me and my mom always struggle with, and this kind of like goes
Yeah.
hand in hand with addiction, is like I've been diagnosed with ADHD. I was diagnosed when I was a small child,
Mm.
and I'm one of those 90s kids that when my mom heard the diagnosis, like she went
She's
and
like,
got
oh,
the
you're crazy.
no, she went and got the prescription. Like they
Oh,
told her,
okay.
they said, hey, we're thinking Ritalин's going to be
Oh, well, that's good then. I feel like I feel like people, with parents, black parents, at least back then, if they never got their kids treatment. It
So
was.
I feel like that can be good and bad. It can be good that you have a parent that is super proactive and that like leans toward innovation. However, if you have a child that says, "Hey mom, I don't really like how these drugs make me feel. Like I act funny around my friends. I'm really tired. I don't eat."
Mhm.
And your mom says like, "Lauren, I know you don't like this medicine, but you going to school with these folks, and I need you to just behave, and I need to work, and she doesn't know any other solutions. It's just us in this small town."
Yeah.
And it became one of these things where it kind of like later in life it came back to haunt me, because it was like, I want this approval from my mom. I want to be this good student and just
Mhm.
be like my other classmates. So I'm gonna take this medicine even though I don't like it, even though it makes me feel a certain type of way. I'm just again with like the people pleasing, and it's like you don't really notice sometimes as a kid like the things that you're doing just for
Yeah.
like the approval. But then later on, when you find yourself addicted or doing things for other people, it's like I can look back and see in my story and be like, oh, like I was doing it for so long, it was a part of my DNA.
Yeah. So what was you and your mom's relationship like overall? Because I know you said that, you looked at her a little sideways after she had you thinking one man was your father. Then you also mentioned the ADHD medication, that you openly explained to her that you did not feel good when you were on this medication. You didn't feel like yourself. Those are just two components that you just said. So from assumption, I would think that you didn't have the best relationship with your mom. But what would you say, like in like one sentence, like what was you and your mom's relationship like?
Me and my mom's relationship has always been tumultuous.
Always.
It's
Okay.
always been like, again, like with the struggles with ADHD. I feel like for my mom, again, she's a human being, so
Mhm.
I can understand, like she
Yeah.
was learning a lot of the times as I'm learning. There's no instruction manual on parenting.
Yeah.
But there are a lot of times where I just kind of look back and I just like, I sometimes think, where does the willful ignorant, or excuse me, where does the lack of knowledge end and like the willful ignorance begin, because again, like person to person, if I'm, expressing to you how I feel, I'm telling you this is my truth, and you're, silencing me, or you're not believing it, or you're doing other things.
Yeah.
It's like it becomes a real like seesaw type of
Yeah.
relationship. And even, going to treatment and being in therapy and like really wanting to repair the relationship, I've had to do a lot of inner work and just kind of realize, like, if it's something that she wants and it's something that is important to her, she will, put forth the effort and hopefully one day show some interest.
Yeah, that's good. I'm glad to hear that. And you can only hope, because once someone is an adult, they're an adult, and you got to give grace the best you can. And sometimes some relationships are, you just got to keep it where they're at, just for your own sanity and mental health. So I know you said that you church was a big part of your life.
Yeah.
And then you also said when you got to your teen years, you had a little bit more of a troubled, teenage.
Yes, that's when
couple
the action
years.
started happening.
Yeah, so with you being a church girl, your mom made sure you were also in the private Christian school. You said you had a great father figure in your life. What led to you kind of going off the rails a little bit?
So let me tell you what the turning point began. Like I said, I was in a small town. So a lot of times in small towns, things will happen, and it's again, it's a small town, so it's super unheard of.
Yeah.
My father, Mr. Miller, was a businessman there, and there were times where he might have like different members of the community come and help him if he had like a large job to do.
Okay.
So one of the people that had Miss Shannon, who had helped him do a large job before, she was also a substitute teacher at the school. One day I was like in a class that she was subbing. Long story short, I was having a conversation with some friends. Miss Shannon butted in, and we became like a back and forth because, again, like I said, I knew her from outside of school. And, one thing led to another, and Miss Shannon revealed to me that Mr. Miller was not my father. And it's like looking back, being an adult, realizing how inappropriate all of this was, traumatic. It's just like, wow. But like being, 17, all I knew was
Well,
like,
was later in your teen years. Okay.
Yeah, all I knew was like everybody around me is lying to me, like I'm not doing anything.
And this teacher did this because of what? You said she did this.
Again, like I said, we were just having like a little back and forth.
Just
Like I feel like sometimes nowadays you'll see, like, I guess some of these TikTok teachers, they do the content where they're wanting to be cool with the students, wanting to roast and this, that, and the third.
Yeah.
And I was like, nah, my dad. She was like, Mr. Miller, not your dad. You play. And it was like, it hit me like 1,000 knives, because I'm like,
she wasn't trying to be messy.
She was definitely trying to be messy. It was one of those like draw for Uno reverse. Like I'm like,
because when you said that, I'm only asking because you said that she was trying to be cool. So I was like, okay, maybe she's just like, girl, that's not like thinking that
Miss Shannon was definitely one of the assistant teacher, like one of the teacher assistants that like shopped at where we shop, came in the kids' fashion. If this was nowadays, she gonna have the 32 bust down,
the lashes.
Yes, like Miss Shannon was that one. Like she also worked at my job at like Wendy's. Like I'm telling you, it's a small town. Like so this wasn't like, I want to say like it was calculated, but like she knew exactly what she was doing.
Did the whole town know but you?
I wouldn't say like the whole town knew but me, but remember, I'm a child, and I feel like back in that day, like you stayed in a child's place. Like even though I might see stuff, I wouldn't kind of be like, oh, this is strange. I just knew like, oh, he stays over there. You know what I mean?
So
like,
what was that conversation like with your mother when you found out?
So when I got that revelation, I remember I collected all my stuff. I went and put everything in my locker. I was like, I didn't live far from school. I was like, I'm going home. Like I was like, I don't know what's going on. I've never felt these emotions like in my body. I'm just like, I'm mad. I'm confused. I'm like, who am I? What's going on? So I remember I sat down and I was just like in my living room waiting. Like because my mom, she worked during the afternoons, but I knew she was going to come home. Yeah. So when she came home, I was just sitting there like, who is Mr. Miller? And she's like, Lauren, what are you talking about? And it was like the whole time I've been sitting there, I thought about how, my mom was super guarded and protective of my birth certificate and just like different, things that would hold the information of who I was. And she's like, Lauren, she's not really wanting to talk about it. And I'm like, Mom, at school, this is what happened. This is what said. Why would somebody say this to me? And I could tell like from her eyes, like, she wasn't really ready, but she was tired of the lie. Like, and it was one of those like, Lauren, He's not your dad. And the thing that I feel like about this situation that made it so, I don't want to say like monumental, or again, I just feel like it kind of framed our relationship. It's the lack of accountability. There's never been like
there was never like an apology.
There was never an apology. There was never a, what do they call them now? Post story, trauma story. What do they call it? The hero's log, whatever.
Okay.
Fun term they've given these days. But there a hero's epilogue. There was no like, Lauren, this is the reason why we did this. This was why I did this. It was just kind of like, Lauren, I'm sorry you found out. We did what we had to do. I just, and so it was one of those things that became like, I can't think of any other way to say it, but in the words of like Young Jeezy, like, we'll never be the same no more. You know what I mean? It's like, it's kind of like a broken mirror and you try and put it back together. You'll hurt your fingers, on the glass trying to put the pieces back together. So it was just one of those things where it kind of like kickstarted the rebellion, skipping school, and like I completely stopped going to, like, I gave my class over to someone. I was still, responsible, but, no church, constant work, and just really.
But, sorry, not to cut you off, but quickly, just for context, did you call him Mr. Miller growing up?
No, growing up, so I called him my dad. Like, he was always my dad. One of the things when I look back on my childhood and smile is like every year, like before back to school, like let's say I was going to be in like the 4th grade, we would go to Toys R Us and I could get like 4 things I wanted. And then when it was the 5th grade, it'd be like 5 things. And so like, he was one of those people that even to this day, like, I'm so glad was in my life because he treated me so special and was so kind. And even though, the relationship wasn't, typical or, quote unquote storybook-esque, it helped, I feel like it helped me. And for lack of a better term, I can't say I grew up without a father. Like, I can say like a father wasn't in my home per se. However, like, when I was at dance recitals, there was someone there with flowers for me in a car. On Valentine's Day, I've all like until recently, like I was always receiving flowers from Mr. Miller. He passed away, unfortunately, but that type of thing. So it provided, like what they say, it did what it needed to do, or it gave what it needed to give. So that was nice.
And I know, I mean, you said you found out at 17, but you also mentioned that your high school years were your troubled years. So were you were like, so like, I guess freshman year through junior year, you were well behaved, and then senior year found out you.
I want to say freshman through junior was real cool.
Okay.
Senior year was off the chain. I think I told you I was in a traumatic car accident where we had actually taken my best friend's mother's car, totaled it on the highway, and abandoned it.
So this was, so before we get into that story, so that was while, because I'm trying to understand, like, when you felt that you started misbehaving. You said it
that's
was
when,
because
like,
of
all
Mr.
like it was like Mr. Miller thing happened.
Okay.
All the gloves
and
were
then
off.
That's when the car
it's like the car accident happened. Super interested in boys. Like, I think at that point in time, me and my homegirls had made a pact that we weren't talking to high school dudes anymore. Like, it was college or better. Like, that's what we were doing. Like, if you didn't have a car in your own spot, like, couldn't get the number.
I'm not gonna lie, that was kind of me. And once I was like, we don't talk to high school boys, we talk to college boys now.
And
like, I was really talking to college boys, but
it's cool. But I feel like looking back, I'm like, oh man, I was dealing with some real live predators. I remember, I got to the point, my mom decided, she's like, hey, if you want to have some friends over, it was my first and only sleepover. We ended up sneaking out the house. She ends up calling me and letting me know, she's like, hey, Lauren, I just want to let you know I was responsible for all 3 of you guys, and whoever you're with, if you guys aren't returned within the next 15 minutes, I'm calling the sheriff's office and putting out an APB on all 3 of you. So when I say, like, the high school years into adulthood got real rocky real fast. Wow. It was meeting a lot of just sketchy people, doing a lot of colorful things, and just...
So, oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Just really, I don't want to say earning my stripes, but really getting some tracks on the testimony, okay?
Yeah. I mean, look, I guess when something as traumatic as that happens, like, someone that you thought, like, I can't even imagine if my dad that I have now, my mom said, oh, it's actually not your dad. I would be very angry with her. I'd feel confused. So I can imagine at 17 how that impacted your life. And then at that age when you're like, well, I'm grown now, I'm a rebel. So the story that you highlighted, and you already brought it up with the entire car accident situation. were you guys drinking and then that's why y'all left? Like, so what made you guys leave? And who was this a friend that was like a bad friend? Like,
No, so
what made
this
y'all
was
make this decision?
so funny enough. She was actually a girl from up top. She had just moved from Baltimore. She really didn't know too. She
Okay.
was what you would say green. You know what I'm saying? And we had went to the football game earlier.
Yeah.
Like again, she was actually a year younger than me. I was a junior. She was a sophomore, whatever, however it goes. And like we was like, had the energy and excitement from the game, and like we didn't go to the teen club after. I'm like, shoot, at the time, like it was I guess you could say a project or an apartment complex. It was all the football players and all the dancers stayed at like the not adult dancers, but like the high school dancers,
like cheerleaders and dancers. Okay,
they stayed. So it was like Easton was popping, and one of our friends' mom was going to be having something over there. So it was like, man, if we go over there, she's like, we'll take my mom's car. I just don't know where to go. And I was like, I bet. So
God.
Fortunately for me in this situation, I did not drive the car. However, so many of our classmates, she as well, drove the car. We joyrid. It was a real crazy night. And then unfortunately, when we were on our way back to actually return the car and go home, the girl, my friend, she was in the passenger seat. A friend of ours was driving. Remember, I told you everybody was driving the car that night.
Yeah.
She was asleep. She woke up out of her sleep, grabbed the wheel. We hit a guardrail. Like it was so wild because like there was no alcohol involved, no drugs. But once we hit the guardrail, we realized we were in trouble.
Yeah.
And she was like, hey, my mom's got insurance. We can leave the car. And I'm like, you better than me, because I'm like, I don't even know. I'm like, I'm scared that I just, being a passenger in this whole situation. So we run off the highway. We go to this little shopping center. And because I said we stay in a small town, there was somebody there delivering newspapers. And like between us, we all had like $200. So we walked up on him like, yo, like we need rides home. Like, can you help us out? And he was like, what radio station y'all want to listen to? And like we went home, and unfortunately when my friend's mom woke up, she's waking up to no vehicle. So she's like, I don't know what's going on. Like, have we been robbed? And like me and Ashlyn like sat there and act like we didn't know what was going on. Like we acted like we just woke up too.
Did she ever find out that?
Oh yes, because again, she called the police, and when the police came and she started telling the description of the car, they were like, oh yeah, that was abandoned on the highway this morning. And so, we were caught pretty quickly. And again, like it wasn't my mom's vehicle. I hadn't been driving, but just, being a passenger.
Being associated and
everything, it was just kind of like, these were the beginnings of like what was going to be happening later on in my life.
Yeah. So that was just one example of you in high school, like going through trouble, like just being a teenager, but maybe like
again with the I feel like with me a lot of the times it wasn't necessarily me being the trouble, but kind of like finding all the perfect situations and throwing them in a bowl and being like, oops, what happened.
What were like, not to like just like different examples, if you can like list off like other things that you were doing in that stage before we get into the next portion, which is
So high school was super crazy. I know at one point in time I was really good friends with a girl whose grandmother was the manager of like an ABC or like a package store. And I remember every Friday I had to have my $12 to get my bottle of Burnett's. And I was going to, after I got my bottle of Burnett's, I was going to go home. And, before I would get ready for the game, I'd have me some water bottles. And we, getting ready for the teen club, because we're going to take our bottles in, our little purse. And, we're just going to, have fun. And it's like, you think back and think things are like sweet and innocent, but it's like, no, like these were the pavings of the road for addiction. These were, starting little habits and tricks that were going to follow me throughout my life, hiding alcohol, being really secretive about my addictions and super closeted about what I was involved in. And it's,
What age did you start drinking?
So my first drink I had, I want to say I was like 14. And it's so interesting, like, when, because I told, well, I didn't come out and say this, but me, I'm an alcoholic and I'm a person in long-term recovery. I'm a grateful person in long-term recovery. But the first drink I had was with a family member. And, at the time, I'm pretty sure they thought it was super, super innocent. We're here, we're getting ready to have a...
Oh, y'all were, it wasn't a sip, it was like drinking.
It was kind of like at 14, I remember my uncle, he had made a Long Island iced tea. And, you 14, well, again, I can't speak...
A 14-year-old? I get first drink?
But
Oh,
see,
okay.
but let me tell you this how this works. So I took, I'm 14. I took the first sip. I was like, oh, this is nasty. I don't like tea from New York.
Yeah.
And it was
Oh,
kind of like a funny joke.
okay.
But
Oh,
then
so it was a sip situation. You weren't.
Yeah,
Okay.
it was like
I
a
thought y'all
sip.
was like vibing, drinking Long Island.
No,
sip. I said
like
for
my uncle
14.
made the drink. I took a sip. It would, again, because I was 14,
Okay.
it didn't really hit.
Yeah.
But I will say what kind of became not like the gasoline on the fire was, like being around friends, like I said, whose grandmother works at a package store. She's got immense access to alcohol and being like, oh, try this. Oh, you don't like this? Try Fireball. Oh, you don't like Fireball? Try Bacardi
And a package store is a liquor store?
A package store is like an ABC store. We call them the
Okay.
ABC store where I'm from, but it's a liquor store.
Liquor store.
And, kind of getting in that habit of every Friday having, the money for this Burnett's vodka, getting in the habit of,
So just having easy access to alcohol is what, okay.
easy access, transportation, connecting all the dots. And it's like looking back, it's like it kind of did pave the road for addiction. And I can look at the friends that I had at this point in time that haven't made this decision or that are still, doing whatever they're doing. And their lives kind of reflect. Like, I'm not going to be like everybody I was hanging around that time, life is in the dirt. But like, I get on Facebook and I'm like, man, like, I hope they
Thank
can
God
find
you
the
got
peace.
away from that. Yeah. And
Yeah.
Yeah, I get that. So you ended up eventually getting into dancing. And if you guys don't know what I mean by dancing, adult entertainment dancing. How old were you and how did you get into that industry?
So, like I said, at this point in time, I was really involved in a lot of risky situations and risky decisions. And at the time, I found myself, I was like working at like a Dollar Tree, and some women came in.
Wait, what age were you?
At this point in time, maybe like 19, 20.
Okay.
You know what I mean? I was still living it, like I was still living at home, but I was like traveling, kind of doing my own thing. But I met these girls that came in and kind of like in Players Club, they sold me the dream. They're telling me of how they're working, the nights and doing this and going out to eat and hanging with these guys. I'm like, wow, this sounds like so much fun. And they're like, oh my gosh, come join us. We're going to be at work tonight. And so they, give me their information or whatnot. And I remember I came up there because I was going to be a waitress. Like in my heart of hearts, I was like, I'm going to just try waitressing or bartending out. And that didn't happen. But they were, as clubs say, always looking for entertainment. So I found me a pair of heels and got up there and was like, oh, this, isn't so bad. And in the beginning, it wasn't. It was lots of like, I always say like, sometimes the worst stories, they always start out like lots of fun. Like I always think about those times like it was like a party 24/7. It's like we're leaving, the club, going to the apartment. We're leaving the apartment, going to dinner, and we're just like doing, all these fun things until, something serious happens and then it's no longer fun.
Yeah.
And it becomes like, who are these people I'm around? What's really happening? Because the unfortunate thing about in that world and in that life is like you make a lot of fast decisions, a lot of fast money, a lot
very
of fast-paced
environment. Yeah.
And unfortunately though, one thing I've learned just being in food, like good things take time. Sometimes it's best to let things marinate, let them roast, let them really cook. And so sometimes with these fast relationships that really have no merit or no value, again, when you put a real situation on top of it, it's gonna show the lack of substance that's there.
Yeah.
For lack.
With the women that you met, 'cause I know you mentioned a friend named Akila, and that's when you started dancing. Were one of them Akila?
Yeah. So one of the ladies was Akila, and the other girl, her name was Nikki.
Oh, so it's two. So how? Okay, because I know you said you were working there. How did this conversation even come about for you to even like that you felt so comfortable to like end up going with them to the club? Because y'all seem like y'all really kicked it off, hit it off when y'all were there.
So let me tell you, Tony, when I met them, it was just like, have you ever been like out somewhere and you just see girls
like the girls' bathroom when y'all just
yes, they are having fun.
it
It's
up,
like an energy and like an enigma. It's like they have music playing around them. It's like their skin, their hair, like
so
they're
just
just
were like baddies, and you were like,
and I'm just like, oh my gosh, like y'all live here, like doing what? And they're like, yeah, we up the road. It's plenty of money. Like, what are you doing? I'm like, I'm just working here at Dollar Tree. I'm wasting my time. I need to go up here and take my talent.
Because you weren't in school, were you? Or
wasn't in school,
so
but it was
like
just
going through the motions.
Just going through the motions in a small town, like working just like dead end jobs, trying to figure out what my next move was going to be.
Okay.
But at the same point in time, I had a friend that had just moved to Atlanta, and that seemed like really promising, but it also seemed like really far away because, like I told you, I didn't have like a lot of familial support. So even
Yeah.
the thought of like getting a ticket and moving to Georgia, I'm just like, well, what's going to happen here? Is my mom going to support me? Like, what if it doesn't work out in Atlanta? What's going to be, you know, the next thing for me?
Yeah.
So it was just a real interesting time. But
Mhm.
again, this was going to be, you know, one of these another decisions that really kind of
Yeah.
changed the trajectory of everything I had going on.
I gotcha. Okay. And then maybe this is like TMI, I don't know, but like, what do you do for the audition? Like, I know you said you were caught off guard and you just got heels. Like, they make you dance? Like, what do you do?
So for the dancers audition, I mean, each club is very different. Like I will say for North Carolina, they are very tame. Like they are on a
Yeah.
stage. They're usually during day shift. You can kind of pick your
During, oh,
songs.
you dance during the day?
No, so like a lot of times, like with auditions, like just
Yeah.
like with jobs, you don't show up in like the peak hours. So you're
Oh,
gonna show
okay,
up a little
okay,
bit
gotcha. Okay.
beforehand so you can kind of meet them, see the club, kind of see what it's like.
Yeah.
You also, one of the things, like for me, it's like you want to see the cars in the parking lot, see what's going on, see what other dancers drive, what the customers might look like, what might be like. Is this going to be safe? You know, situational
Okay.
awareness. So anyway, you show up to the club, like I'm saying, like North Carolina, Caucasian clubs for the most part, it's going to be on stage. It's going to be above the board. You know, you're probably going to do 2 songs, one song fully clothed, another song maybe topless, just to see your
Mhm.
personality, that kind of thing. And they'll go from there. Black clubs in Atlanta, oh, it's a whole nother ball game. Like, you might have to get on stage. It might be held in the manager's office, no music. And it's just going to be like, hey, let's see your body. Just turn around, touch the ground, touch your toes.
Like
Are you
undressed?
Yeah. Because again, you're going to be working for them. You're going to be a representative of this club. And like, with you being new, they want to see if you have anything like stab wounds, bullet marks, this, that, the third, tattoos, you know? So it's a very, I mean, but at the end of the day,
No,
it's,
bend down and bend. That sounds.
I mean, at the end of the day, like, you've already been doing it. So it's kind of
Yeah, I
like
guess.
already in your mindset. And it's just like, the only thing that kind of makes this different is like, I'm going to be seeing you every day.
Yeah.
Because the interesting thing about dancing is like, it's very, even though it's very, very intimate, it's also very anonymous. It's like, I'm giving you a name, I'm giving
It's a
you a
fake name.
story. Like, it's a whole lot of different things that kind of come into this.
Oh, so you kind of I didn't know that. So like, and I know you get like a name, like a like
Yeah, like you pick your name, but
I didn't know you give like a false story.
a lot of times just to kind of keep my personal life and my private life
Yeah.
separate, it was like, oh, I'm here at this club for this reason. This is what I like to do. It's like the dance name had a whole persona and stuff that she liked to do. And a lot of the times, just being honest, Felix and Lauren are 2 completely different things. 2
Oh, that
completely
was your
different.
name?
Yes, Felix. So
Felix,
like
okay.
and again, it's like you kind of want to have something fun,
Like
catchy.
funky.
Yeah, like I remember one of the girls, her name was Miami, and this is way before Young Miami.
came about.
And it was like, the cool thing about Miami was like, she was like that. Like, I don't want to say her real name, but it's like Miami was lights, camera, action, va va voom, like curves, skin, hair, nails, perfume. Like, she is woman and she's gonna take all your money. Like, like that's but
I
that's
would never think in Winston-Salem that like you can make good money from dancing.
So the thing about small towns versus like big towns, it's kind of different, is like you're able to be a little bit more personable,
So you
get
have,
a
like,
little bit more
regulars,
intimate.
more like-
And then like sometimes the attractions are different. Like you might have people here for like a furniture convention, or you know, banking is really big in Charlotte, so they might be here for finance, or like when the golf tournaments are popping. So it's like you might have a whole different clientele versus the young YN that's wanting that magic vibe coming through to want to, you know what I'm saying, throw some. Okay, Tony with the tooth gem. I'm like, what is this sparkling? This is so cute. I love this. You like, I'm like, yeah, you just start smiling. I'm like, okay, Tony.
Got my little mini grill.
I'm here for it. I like
I got
it.
it at a YouTube event. So
It's
yeah.
cute.
They were
Oh
giving
my
them out
gosh.
for free. They're like, well, they had like the girls there. We were laying out on the chairs, and she's like, "You want one?" I was like, "I just ate food. I didn't want to get it."
I
She's like, "No,
love
it's not
it
like
for
this.
you.
Different." Yeah.
It's so unexpected, but
Thank
so
you.
relatable. Okay, Tony.
That's what I like about it. It's a little peekaboo. People don't expect. They always randomly see, they're like, "Tony, you have a tooth gem." They never expect it from me. So I'm like,
And because it's up top, it's cute. If it was
Yeah.
down here, I'd be like, Tony.
"What's going on?"
Tony be trapping. Tony be down there with the tooth gem, y'all. She be,
So, Go
Gun,
turn
I'm
up. A
just
little
playing.
something, no.
But yeah, the
Be up there with Miami. No?
yes, I'm like, yeah, the 2 Jam threw me. But
Okay.
yes, for the guys that are looking to do that, that's not going to be that. But
Yeah.
for the customer that's coming in that might, for lack of a better terms, I remember I had a customer who wanted to show me a photo album of like all of his collectibles. They were like these kind of like cars, like it's dark. I can't see this. I can barely even hear what you're saying, but you just want to show this to someone. You just want the attention. So it's like,
Yeah.
I'm gonna fill these shoes. And like one of the things I really learned about that is, and just from being in that environment, at the end of the day, we all want connection, whether we're paying for it, whether it feels real, whether it's even to pay, what I'm saying, to pay our bills. We're all in a way searching. And
Yeah.
one of the most interesting things I kind of found out in that journey was like one of the saddest places to be, honestly, was like at clubs on holidays, because it's like you're there and it's like people are either there trying to provide for their families, trying to get these last minute dollars to like maybe put something on the table or maybe make the holidays shine. And then you got folks that are wanting to escape their families and have all this money that they're ready to throw, and they really don't care about what you got going on or this, that, and the third. They more for so are just looking at your body. And
Yeah.
it's a really, really interesting dynamic to find yourself in, because I feel like one of the most interesting things about the club is you see them at their most vulnerable. You see them. It's kind of like what we working in food now. Like I see the worst sides of people. I see you, when you just told somebody you're someplace else, but you're here, you're with me. I see you sending that text saying you're doing this other thing, but you're really getting ready to pay for this dance. I see you doing that money transfer, taking it from one thing, moving it over here. You know what I'm saying? And it's like when you see that, sometimes even when you exit that world, it makes it really hard to just accept reality, because you've seen so much. And those are, I feel like, some of the scars that, even though people like glamorize it now, they don't talk about, like the after effects. Like I always kind of relate dancing to kind of like being in an earthquake. And like, even though you can walk away, like you might hear something or feel something, and it's going to remind you of what happened. Yeah, it's going to remind you of what happened. Like, even now dating men, like I know for like or just going out, like I felt for a long time, like even when I was out of that world, like because you're dancing in the clubs really, really suggestively. When I would be out dancing with friends, I would always kind of in the back of my mind wonder, like, does this look regular or does this look like I'm dancing in the club? And then sometimes even like going out, it's like I'm like, are these shorts, like, are they stripper short or are they like regular short? So it's just like
differentiating it.
It's all these things. But again, like,
did your mom know you were dancing? How did that come about? Like, were you living with her while you were dancing?
So when I made the decision to start dancing full on, I had moved in with Akila and Nikki, and like I said, this is kind of
the girls you met.
This is kind of gone full blown. So I'm in this apartment, I'm dancing, and it's there. And she was definitely not for it. It was, again, another tumultuous part of our relationship.
And you, just to clarify, you told her that you danced, or did she find out?
It was more kind of like a mix of like, I feel like with dancing, you never really, I'm not gonna say for me, it was like I kind of came out and said it, but it was more so like you could just tell with the lifestyle and how things were
leaving late at night.
Yeah, it was like it was like I'm moving out, like I'm with these girls.
Oh, so you just moved out on your own. It wasn't because your mom said get out my house because you're dancing.
It was never. Okay. Luckily, we never had one of those things. But for me, unfortunately, I never felt like a longing to kind of just like stay in that environment. So it was like when I kind of met these girls and like they're showing me this life and this, I didn't kind of think like, hey, I should think about this before I jump out. I'm like, no, I'm moving in with them, and if it don't work out with them, I just go to Atlanta. And that's really what kind of happened. One of the things about this situation that became really interesting is like while I was working at this club in North Carolina, I was assaulted after work. And for me, that's kind of when I want to say like the music stopped, but it's like that's when everything became really real. Like I realized, like I'm in super dangerous situations. I don't know these people. And if something was to happen, like something has happened to me, like I'm alone, I'm by myself. And, I feel like the part of the story that made it that much more heartbreaking was, I mentioned that I had a really rough relationship with my mom. And like after they had done the rape kit at the hospital, I called her with the nurse there by my side and I'm like, hey, is there any way you can come pick me up? And she's like, Lauren, you're going to have to find somebody else. Like, I'm at work, I can't leave. And it was like that moment right there, it kind of pulled the same string when I found out that Mr. Miller wasn't my dad. It was like, man, like I'm out here by myself.
And you
Like,
told her that you were assaulted and she
yeah,
still didn't want to come?
yeah, it was just like, Lauren, I'm at work. You're gonna have to find somebody else. And it was just like, you think about so many different things. Like as a human being, like if someone is in danger, because it's like even now, like thinking about it, like because it's my story, it's just it's so many thoughts. But it's like for me, like my job is my passion. Like I love what I do, and I could not even fathom like if a friend of mine called me in a serious emergency like that, turning to my employer being like, hey, can I go? And my employer, saying like, I'm sorry, you can't. And me being like, oh, I feel comfortable working here. Like I wouldn't even feel, you know what I'm saying? Like it would be one of those things where it's like I would have to make a decision. And for me, the thing that's always kind of hurt was it was like you chose like I
You
was
chose
never,
work over,
yeah, it was like it wasn't even
friend.
it wasn't even an option.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And it's one of those moments in life where I always kind of wonder like what would have happened if she came. What would that have been like? Like because for me, like all I can say is like that situation, it was like throwing gasoline on a fire. I was like, I don't want to live in North Carolina. I don't want to stay here. Like I don't know what's going on, but like this is all really, really whack.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like the girls that I were living with, I didn't really know them. I was kind of again like when something like that happens, like all the fun times, all the drunk trips to Walmart, all the coming in from the club late at night, having like all that was over.
Yeah. Well, for one, I just want to say I'm really sorry that that happened to you. For one, just dealing with any form of sexual assault, that's very traumatic. But then not having that support system in that moment when you need them, that's just like I'm appalled. Especially like with being a mother, a sister, whatever. Especially a mother, not supporting your child during that time. So I'm so sorry that you went through that. And that just breaks my heart. In terms of alcoholism and how you got to the point where you were consuming alcohol. I know you even mentioned that you guys would have drunk trips to Walmart. Do you feel as if the club, you talked about dancing and even you got sexually assaulted while you were leaving work, you said, right?
Right.
Do you feel as if the club was something that triggered your alcoholism or triggered certain instances, and this is not victim blaming at all, but certain instances like where you end up in certain predicaments? Do you think that was because of drinking, or the club atmosphere that caused you to drink and be placed in those types of
So I feel like for a lot of my life, it was searching for connection, searching for that light, searching for acceptance. And unfortunately, I found, like I said, acceptance was like a key in these risky situations.
Yeah.
And for me, thank God, while I was dancing and while I was in a lot of these environments, even though alcohol was around, it wasn't like it really wasn't a driving force. It was kind of, again, like a party favor. But for me, what happened were these traumatic stories that I'm telling you about, like my mom not coming to pick me up from the hospital after being raped. Those are things I drank over. Like, and going through my program, like when you're in treatment, first of all, like when you first get there, they have you tell your life story. And like when you're telling your life story, you're able to kind of go over certain moments. And it's like from certain moments, I'm like, man, like I can remember from me living my life, like when I would have a rough day, like let's say, I might be doing something and I don't get the call back or whatever. I'm like, man, they didn't call me back. This is just kind of like, when my mom didn't come to get me from the hospital. And it's like, even though I'm just drawing a correlation and I'm not saying it was that particular instance every time, it's like the trauma that kind of gave way to the addiction.
Okay.
A lot of the times I feel like the dancing, the poor decisions, like these are kind of like after effects, but like the root was like the trauma, the hurt. And one of the blessings about going through a program is you learn the opposite of addiction is connection, and the opposite of isolation is connection. So, connecting to these sober support groups and getting people in your life that support you, what I'm saying, immensely. Like right now, I would not even be here if it wasn't for my sponsor. And being able to have a relationship with someone that has been so pure and so instrumental in really like getting my life on track has really just changed my whole trajectory. Like I honestly, if I didn't have my program, my higher power, and the strength of my community, I don't even think I would be sitting here right now.
Yeah.
Well, I know I wouldn't be sitting here right now.
Yeah. So you feel as if your support system was after like that incident particularly happened. Do you feel as if your support system did the girls, your friends, or anybody that you worked with come to support you in that moment too, or you just felt completely abandoned?
No.
So just you handled that on your own. Okay.
Because unfortunately, I feel like sometimes when stuff like that happens, people they want to help, but sometimes, especially when it comes to pressing charges and getting the police involved,
Yeah.
it's just kind of like, I'm not trying to be, for instance, like in court known as a dancer. So you have friends that are like kind of reluctant as to how much help or how they want to help you.
Support
And it becomes like kind of like, dang, like if the shoe was on the other foot, like I would be there for you.
Yeah.
So
Gotcha. So did you continue? So after this incident happened with you unfortunately getting sexually assaulted, did you continue dancing after that?
After this, I continued dancing. However, I decided to move to Atlanta. I was like, I did not feel like I couldn't feel safe.
Yeah.
Anywhere I turned, like I didn't want to stay at the apartment. I didn't want to be with my mom. I was like, I just need a complete change of scenery. So I decided to come to Atlanta. And then while I was
and really quickly, not to cut you off, with the man that sexually assaulted you, did you know him?
No, I did not know him at all.
Never met him in your life?
No, he was like a customer of the club.
So that's why
so
you
it was like,
okay.
It kind of felt, it's like looking back, there were so many red flags.
Yeah.
However, I don't want to victim blame myself. There was really no way to, no. I was just using my best judgment.
Yeah.
But again, it was,
So after that, you felt like you just didn't feel comfortable with anybody there, and especially not having the support. So you're like, I'm going to Atlanta.
I'm gonna move to Atlanta, and at the time, I had a best friend that lived here, so it was just like, oh, okay, cool. Like I spoke with her mom. She's like, yeah, come on down.
Nice.
Boom, boom, boom. So I found myself in Atlanta, and unfortunately, that situation, it started out cool. Ended up meeting this guy. Got into a horribly domestic relationship, was able to leave that, only to find myself in another relationship.
So you moved to Atlanta, and that was like, you did that because you felt, you weren't feeling safe in Winston-Salem. What did Atlanta, improve your life, or do you feel like it got worse, or it kind of stayed stagnant?
I feel like Atlanta was a good and bad thing. Like, don't get me wrong. It was great. It was a great confidence boot. It was awesome to have a brand new start and just new beginnings in a new city. However, my old habits and bad decision making still came with me from Winston-Salem. So even though I was in a new place, I'm still finding myself with questionable people. I'm still making really risky decisions. I'm really involving myself in things that I don't need to. And so even though I did have the new city, I still had the same old tactics and tricks that I was up to in Winston-Salem. So it's like, even though the location changed, it's like, I still got on the same dirty clothes. I'm still doing the same things. And it kind of, again, started producing the same results.
Yeah. And you moved to Atlanta by yourself, or did you have somebody that you went with?
So I came here by myself. Funny enough, I went to just a regular college party. And while I was at the college party, I met someone and they were like, hey, I got a rich uncle. If you ever need any help, keep this number. I kept that number, and when I decided to get my Greyhound ticket to Atlanta, I called him, and he was like, don't worry about it. It'll be waiting for you at will call.
So you moved in with him?
No. He just paid. He paid for the ticket. He just paid for the ticket. Like, he just paid for the ticket. I moved in with my friend. Like, it was like,
so
it was all cute then. Maybe a couple years later, I'd been moving in with him. But at that point in time, I was like, can you just help me with my ticket, please?
I was like, look, we listen and we don't judge. I mean, you gotta do what you gotta do.
Totally.
Okay.
We judge over here. I'm just playing.
Oh, okay. So you moved to Atlanta. Then we hear very questionable things about Atlanta's dating scene. So were you dating out here? What was that like?
So again, end up meeting a guy. His name was Jay Reddy at the time.
Jay Reddy? Oh,
yeah, Jay Reddy.
His real name, or?
That's what I knew him as.
Okay.
I would later find out his government name when a police officer would show me his rap sheet that was longer than a CVS receipt.
Oh.
Oh yes, like when I talk about who did I marry? Like Risa Tisa ain't got nothing on me, because I did not know I was getting ready to be dating somebody that was like honestly a lieutenant in a crime enterprise.
Wow.
You know,
Wait. Okay, I thought you were saying he was a cop. I said, okay.
oh no,
Okay.
no.
That was a reference. Okay,
In a crime enterprise,
Okay,
like,
okay.
because I mean, you know, you're here, you meet someone at a car wash, they come to pick you up, they got 31 long stem red roses. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
The car's sitting out there, looks so nice. They have this fun-filled date. You don't go but one restaurant, you go to three. Like,
Well,
it is like, I mean, like,
the dream.
I feel like looking now, it's like it screams scammer, scammer, scammer. But like back in the day before social media, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is something like, because again, like, you heard my story, so it's like to hear this, I'm like, finally a break. Like, this is gonna be so nice. And then it's like it turns into like, hey, I'm gonna get you an apartment, but can you keep this at your house? Hey, can you take a passport picture for me? I just need you to be a face on an ID. Hey, can you go out of state with me while we pick some things up to just bring back to Atlanta? And you know, before
just red flags.
Yeah, before you know it, you know what I'm saying, you're knee deep into identity theft and fraud. And when you're wanting to get out, you have this person looking at you like, well, I have all this stuff, so by all means, if you want to get out and turn your life around, that's fine, you can do that. I'm just going to turn this into DeKalb County Police Office. So
so you were an accomplice, technically. Like,
it
he set you up to be.
Yeah, and it was one of those things, like, when I was ready to go, it's like, you can go, but you're going to have this new rap sheet. Like, you're gonna be, you're just consequently gonna go to jail.
I know you said he asked for your, did you ever like question when he would ask for like ID photos and ask for all these things? Did you ever question like?
So I mean, at the time, I'm in my early 20s. I'm living life. I'm going to Lenox daily, Phipps daily.
So you
like,
your
you know what I'm saying? For those that used to live in Atlanta, like, Twist and Shout knew me on a first name basis.
Twist and Shout is
I
was gonna say club. My bad, club.
So no, they were like really nice restaurants. One was in one was in like, not Midtown Promenade, but it's like, one's in Midtown on like 14th Street by the Old W. And then one is Phipps Plaza. But again, they were like really moving and shaking places. So at this point in time, like, being from a small town, like, my life is like lights, camera, action. Like, I don't want to pull the plug. And I'm like, I don't really care who's getting hurt right now. But unfortunately for me, you know, I said, like I said, it was an abusive relationship. So even when I per se was like, oh, I don't want to do this, I don't think this is right for me, like, I want to pull back, that's when the heat really started getting turned up, and I'm getting black eyes, and you know, I ended up losing some teeth. It's one of the reasons I actually have the braces now. I lost 2 teeth in this relationship in a domestic dispute, and you know, I really looked at myself and was like, I didn't sign up for this. And like, don't get me wrong, the polo, this, like, all the labels and stuff were cool, but I really looked at myself and was like, I don't want this for me. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I gotta go. And luckily I was able to figure some things out and escape that. But
how long were you guys together for?
I want to say it was like a 2.5 year run.
Dang. And then when did the abuse, well, first, when did he start asking you for your information to, you know, do fraudulent things? And then when did the abuse start? Was it like from the jump, just for like some girls to potentially see signs of abuse?
So I'm gonna keep it real with you. The first year was real cool. It's real cute. Like, I knew something was fishy, but it was one of those things where it's like, I don't really want to delve into it. It's not really affecting me. It's not my business.
Yeah.
Then, you know, when it started to get more like, hey, I need you to do this. Oh, I want to show you this, and I'm becoming more involved. It was like, oh, like, this is real. But again, it's like, I like all this stuff. It's fun. It's shiny.
Yeah.
And I want to say the abuse started, I want to say like after 1.5 years, it was like, he always had a temper, but it was like the temper was beginning to get accelerated. And like, I noticed, like, it was like we were getting further and further and further away from when we started. And then, like I said, like, the first time it happens, it's like, it's kind of weird, because if you've never experienced anything like this, it's just like, you're like, is it me? Is it, what's going on? And then, you know, if the person is real, like, it's not their first time, they sometimes love bomb you after. Like, and for me, it was getting cards and like a trip to the Four Seasons spa and like all these things. And it's like, yeah, I'm getting to go all these nice places, but like, I'm going with a black eye and a missing tooth. Like
Crazy.
it's like
Were you also dancing at this time?
at this point in time, I had put the dancing behind me, but it was
Mm.
still, you know, the bad decision making and the
With a
poor choice of
partner.
people.
Yeah.
And this wouldn't be it, you know, like even though I got myself out of this relationship with Jay Reddy, I end up finding myself in a relationship with this other guy. And unfortunately, it was incredibly toxic. I think we talked about it last time. He was a hobosexual, not homo, meaning like, you know, I was paying the bills and he was just, you know, doing what he could.
So
Which
how do you think you got into that from going with a man that clearly was he was taking care of you? Where you weren't working when you were with
I
Jay
was
Reddy?
not working.
So you went so you went from a man that was taking care of you, funding your lifestyle for the most part, to a man that you call a hobosexual that was not paying anything and you were taking care of him. Why such a big drastic jump? Why do you think you did that?
So one of the things I think I've even stated before, it was like all about like that connection and searching for that longing. And unfortunately with Jay Reddy, he was like, I always kind of refer to him as kind of like a high school bully seeing the victim coming down the road. It was like he saw me coming. But with me with Chad, it was like this person can essentially like he can do nothing for me, but it's like his attention and his care and his personality, it's like he's got me kind of like looking past this. But also like even though he didn't have the bells and whistles, excuse me, he was still manipulative and still kind of, you know, pulling the strings. And with my history of just, you know, people pleasing and wanting to say yes and just like this constant seek for approval, no matter if it was bad or it was good, I was just kind of like, let's see where, you know, let's see where this goes. And, you know, unfortunately with the Chad situation, you know, I ended up finding myself dealing with alcoholism, pregnant, and having to make, you know, a decision. And I made the decision, you know, that was best for me to terminate the pregnancy long term. And it's been one of those things where it's like, it's something that I always have to live with. But I know for me, like my truth, my whatever you want to call it, at that point in time where I was in my life, I would have been the most unfit parent. I know people want to refer to children as blessings. There is, without a shadow of a doubt, like I can full, honestly, completely, however you want to put it, like I don't want to be like, I would have become my mother in the situation, but I would not have been the parent that I wanted to be for that child. And
Not to cut you off, but when exactly did you feel like I wouldn't be a parent? Did you want to keep the baby at any moment, or was it just from the jump you were like, I'm not keeping this baby?
So I'm gonna just be honest with you, and I'm gonna just keep it a buck. And before I even say this, I feel like one of the best things about growth, if you can't look back on your past and cringe, you ain't been doing no growing. But anyway, for me, it was like the pregnancy at first kind of came out of, it was like a spite thing because like Chad had cheated on me and he got this other girl pregnant. So it was kind of like he's dealing with this other pregnancy and like she had moved to California, so he's focusing his attention there. And you know, I don't want to cite, you know, the culture or anything, but at the time the game was super popular and I'm like, oh, I can be like girl Melanie and you know what I'm saying, like I'll be stepmama and then baby mama too. And at the time, you know, there was a lot going on, but I remember in my mind, I would just think back to some of the women that I had met and like some of the decisions I had heard in their parenting and like the choices they made. And I'm like, Lauren, this ain't you. Like, because again, one of the blessings I feel that I've received in my lifetime is like I have a very, very strong foundation.
Yeah.
Like one of the great things about going to private Christian school is like I've been going since I was 2.5. Like there are certain things that are ingrained in me that will never leave. And you know, my morals and my values, even though I had found myself in a really sticky situation, I did not want to make a bad situation worse. And I really had to like think about my intentions and what I wanted to do. And even though I felt like, yeah, I'm gonna get my get back, I got this baby, like he's got your, you know, like you got pregnant by him, I'm pregnant by him too, and we're gonna do this. It was like, Lauren, this is not me. Look at the women that you're getting this advice from and just think about the long-term after effects. And I think it's so interesting now, you know, sometimes you'll be on like different like maybe YouTube or different platforms, and you'll hear about these women that are regretful parents, and like they get on and cry and tell you about how they have no time for self-care, or they have found themselves in horrible single mother relationships
Yeah.
with, no end in sight. And I know for me, not to kind of make this super personal, and I didn't even touch on this, but like I've had triple heart bypass. So it's like growing up, having ADHD and as well as being a sick baby, you kind of already have this thought of like, what if my child had a long-term illness? Like, am I the person that can kind of like improve their quality of life? Like, what is this really going to look like? And for me, it was like looking at my life, the decisions I had made, and the situation of how things were, and being like,
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to have to make this choice. And as hard as it was, I think the thing that made it kind of most difficult was at the time, I was in contact with my mom because, like I said, I'm not from here, and she had to send me some of my records or my information for me to have the procedure done here in Atlanta. And after the procedure was done, I spoke with her, and she was just like, Lauren, I don't know how to say this, but I never thought I'd raise a murderer. And it was like that stigma, that sting, those words, like that lack of judgment. It's like when we talk about addiction and we talk about using, it's like those are the situations that kind of like dig the holes or like fuel the curiosity. Because like when I talk about these stories, like the pain,
Yeah.
like it's like I've already had to make this like very, very tough decision. And it's like the person that I'm coming to for, it's like I'm not coming to you for judgment. I'm not coming to you necessarily for your opinion. I'm calling you to, let you know I'm okay, and you know what's going on. And you want to come back with like, I never thought I would raise a murderer. And again, like one of the things about addiction and for me, my alcoholism, a lot of the drinking would like start in, like it starts in the mind. It's like this tape that like replays, and it'll just be like these scenarios are like really, really tough situations I've gone through. And it's like it's so difficult when you'll just be like living your everyday life and you're trying to navigate, and it's like you might have a one poor feeling you already have, and then you kind of go back to like this because you don't have that support, you don't have that encouragement, and like it only fuels it even more, if that makes any sense, you
So,
know.
do you feel as if the abortion that you had, that it fueled more of you drinking, and like, or did it impact you at all? Like,
So
and just like to reel it in terms of this relationship you had with Chad, and you said it was toxic. You said that it was like, he got another woman pregnant and all these things. Like, how did this impact you in terms of you wanting to continue drinking?
for me, I'm trying to think of how I want to word this. I'm because see, I feel like
Yeah.
there's like two questions. um for me, the actual abortion, the actual process, like it's like that was like a byproduct, but it was like more so everything else kind of became the worst. Like everything else kind of became the worst part. And it wasn't that, the situation or this, it was just kind of like, again, wanting this connection with people, or wanting just some type of emotion. Because again, I didn't say this, when I had my abortion, Chad was in California and Ashley was actually having her baby. And I'll never forget, like I called him that morning, like, hey, I'm here, I'm getting ready to have this. He's like, so how do you have your hair? Like, did you do your makeup? And I just remember thinking like,
Wait, why did he ask about your hair and makeup?
like again, like I'm here for an abortion. You think I did my hair and makeup? Like how you think I came? Like this is like this ain't that. Like read the room, check the temperature. Like
He knew you were pregnant.
yes. So the again, when I say this was like a real just toxic situation. The only way I can kind of explain it or describe it was like Chad got Ashley pregnant. So I went and got pregnant.
Mhm.
I became pregnant. And
Yeah.
instead of when I became pregnant saying anything, I waited till I was like I waited till I was like 6.5 months to say something. And so,
Oh, to him about being pregnant. So
yes,
he didn't.
to him. So Chad did not know.
So you were deep into your pregnancy at this point.
Deep into it, because at one point in time I was like, oh, I remember when I first got pregnant, I was like, oh, how can I say anything? Because I saw how stressed he was with dealing with this other pregnancy, because she doesn't even live in Atlanta and he's dealing with all the stuff, calling, because unfortunately, like, not unfortunately, but like, she was Caucasian, Chad was black, and there was just like, it was like from my understanding, it was a one night stand that went horribly wrong. And and it was just like a lot of drama there. So looking back, because I'm just trying to give nuance, it's like it was a lot of emotion. It was like a lot of competition and anger and just like, oh, let me one up her and this and that. But then like once I found myself pregnant, I'm in that situation. I'm like, oh my gosh, like how am I gonna tell him? What's gonna be my game plan? Like, what's this gonna look like? And I remember I got to a point where I was like, you know, I have to do something. I don't know if you've ever seen that movie Girl on the IRT, where she's watch it. She's pregnant, and long story short, she doesn't do anything about it, and she ends up having the baby. Like, she just ends up having a baby, because that's what happens when you're pregnant. And so I know for me, even making the decision was difficult, but all in all, I just knew I couldn't really continue that lifestyle and that life cycle. And this isn't a diss or anything like that, but like I said, Chad was the type of person that would ask me what my hair and makeup look like while I'm getting ready to have an abortion. So it was just one of those things. Like, he was a good person at times, but there would be, like, again, these moments where life would kind of show me, like, I don't think I want to have these kind of ties connected to me.
Yeah. So if he found out at 6 months, when you were 6 months, so you decided to terminate like later on because I guess the girl had her baby, right?
It was just more one of those things where I don't know any other way to say it, but acceptance is real. And for me, like, I've been raised by a single mom. Like, even though my
Gotcha,
mom,
yeah.
tried to do the whole thing, like, I know the ins and outs. Like, I've seen the highlight reels, but I also know what it feels like to be on the ropes. And for me, it was being able to make the decision to be like, you know what? Even though the situation is kind of a mess and it's a lot going on, like, the buck stops here.
Yeah.
Because it's like, I'm already going to be bringing my child into a situation with a sibling. It's just like, it's really, really messy.
And did you guys break up while you were pregnant, or did you guys break up after the fact?
I just want to say, honestly, I feel like those type of situations, they kind of fizzle themselves out, because not fortunately, however you want to say it, like, once Ashley had her baby, a lot of Chad's attention couldn't help but go out there, because like, she just had his first son. You know what I mean? Even though we may be dating, we might have this cool relationship in Atlanta where, I have this apartment and this and that and the third, like, his first child is out there, his firstborn son. You know what I'm saying? Like, he still's going to take pride in that.
Yeah.
And that was one of those things, and kind of realizing that, what's for you is for you, and what's not for you isn't for you.
Yeah.
And as much as I was trying to force and hold on and really wanted to make it work, I was just like, you know what? Maybe, and I didn't have this outlook at that time, but I'm just like, there's got to be something better for me out there than this, because this is just, it's really leading to a lot of destruction.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, thank you for feeling vulnerable enough to even share that. I know you said at 22 you stopped dancing, and then you eventually left Atlanta. I'm assuming you left Chad too after the entire, that entire situation, which I'm glad you did, because him getting two women pregnant at the same time is crazy. But
baby boy activities.
Yes, yeah, and it's not okay for either woman's health, like when men do things like that. But you decided to leave. You left, so you went from Winston-Salem to Atlanta. Now you're in Texas. Where are you now in terms of you on your journey? Would you consider yourself to be an alcoholic at this point? Do you feel like you improved at this point? Where were you when you moved to Texas? Like, where were you? I guess I'm trying to look for the perfect wording to say this. In terms of your journey, sobriety journey? Were you on the road to sobriety?
Oh, baby. It's so funny because when I think of Texas, I always think of tequila because this is when, like I started drinking because at this point in time, I found myself in a relationship with a man that was a little bit more established. He wasn't a criminal mastermind. He was in tech, y'all. He was in tech.
Corporate man.
Yeah, he was corporate. Your girl didn't have to work. I had a Benz. It was yeah, look, real
You
cute.
got his number now.
He actually has moved to Atlanta, but it was it was real cute. But I remember again, like I didn't have to work, and so when I say some of the habits that I picked up, just kind of moved me to Texas. It's 12 o'clock. I'm watching Law and Order with like a tumbler of say Jose Cuervo, with a piece of ice in there. You know what I mean?
Like I said, why? Like, okay.
Oh no, no, oh no. See, and that's another thing, Tony. For me with my addiction, it was always super accelerated. I always wanted to do, shots in the middle of the day, and
by yourself though.
Yes, and again, because like my boyfriend worked at the time, and like eventually like I would meet neighbors, and like the funny thing about alcoholism is like if you notice around, like alcohol is like widely accepted. Like if I came here with a bottle of wine, it wouldn't even be out of place. It'd be like, oh cute, like you can enjoy it later. But also the double-edged sword about alcoholism, if you are struggling with alcoholism, it becomes so easy to mask your addiction. So like I don't know how many times like I would show up with my neighbors, like again with a bottle of wine, and like, oh, we're gonna drink and we're doing this and we're doing that, and it's like really it's like it's gonna be a couple glasses for you, but like when I get back to the house, I'm gonna crack open a bottle of Cuervo, and like I'm gonna get the party really started. And when my boyfriend comes home, he's gonna be like, Lauren, it's like 7 o'clock, like what's going on? I'm like, turn up.
Before you came on, I wanted to just hear like a few other people that have suffered with alcoholism, and they like literally pin exactly what you said. They said they'd be at a party, they're drinking, or everyone, guys, take shots, take shots, take shots. But then when they went home, everybody's going home. All right, bye, girl. Like, I got work. I got to go. They're like, I reopened that bottle up because they didn't want anybody to see it. So they masked that. Because, like, especially living in a city like Atlanta, and then even, what part of Texas were you in?
At the time, I was in Dallas.
In Dallas. Like, I guess major cities, everything is catered around alcohol. You're actually kind of like, you're weird if you're not drinking. So I can see how, how it can fuel like someone that actually is suffering with alcoholism or is, doesn't know their limits quite yet. How easy it is to get caught up when you're around everybody that's just like, shot o'clock. You're like, all right, I mean, I guess. Like, it's like a peer pressuring thing.
And a lot of the times, it wouldn't like, I feel like it can work so many different ways because, like, sometimes instead of being the peer pressure, I'm just going to always be the provider. Like, I'm always going to have it. It's always going to be available.
Yeah.
And, for me, one of the things I kind of was able to notice in treatment what my addiction is, like, I knew I had an issue because everybody else is going to stop, but I'm going to keep going. Like, and it's going to be, I'm not talking about like, oh, keep going to the next day. I'm like, keep going to like bank account tapped out. I done called somebody, they cash apping me money. Like, it's getting crazy. Like, you know what I mean? And it's one of these things where in your alcoholism, you're really also tapped into your selfishness. So it's not a whole lot of consideration about what's going on for me or my fellow man. It's like, oh, but did you die though? Like, you didn't get hurt, or, oh, I'm just, I'm only affecting myself. Like, this isn't bothering anybody else. And, it was taking, I always say, like, people talk about, your bottom or like when you knew you had to change. But for me, I could just kind of look around and it's like, your standards get lower and your consequences, they're getting higher and higher. And it's like you're running through jobs. And I know it was a joke between my friends, about how many phone numbers I would go through in a year. Cause like I would lose iPhones like it was nothing.
Cause you were like blacking out?
I wouldn't even say blacking out. Like I might go, go in a bathroom real quick. I've left my phone on the toilet paper dispenser.
To drink.
And because we live in Atlanta, somebody stole my phone.
Yeah.
But because we live in Atlanta, when I call the phone, they're like, yo, if you can cash out $50, you can have it back.
That's crazy.
Wait.
So I'm trying to, so you're connecting, like you losing your phone or like losing or getting into trouble. Cause I thought you were saying like, oh, you were just, just drinking, finding anywhere, any point to drink. So then like you may have like lost track of your phone. What exactly, like when you're talking about you losing your stuff, like what are you connecting that with?
So I mean, in like, for instance, like you might I know for me, like I told you when I was in Texas,
Mhm.
like I was pretty much like a stay-at-home girlfriend. So I got really used to like staying at home drinking.
Yeah.
So that's very different from, club hopping, bar hopping, going from place to place. And it's like if
Drinking,
you're
yeah.
used to being in like a closed setting, it's like if I sit my phone down and come back, like I'm used to it,
Gotcha. Okay.
it being there. And it's like now with these again new habits, new people trying to keep up,
Mhm.
like I'm going out, going places, I'm losing phone, I'm losing
Gotcha.
keys, I'm
Okay.
losing, and it's like
Mhm.
having to get my ID reprinted in the middle of the week or trying to explain to an employer why this is my third phone number, just different things like that. And you really just start to see the unmanageability that the addiction brings to your life. It's not necessarily because I feel like you'll hear people all the time talk about how they're like functioning addicts and like, oh, they can do this. It's not about a matter of functioning. Like, let's just talk about the manageability. And then if you really want to take it a step further, I know for me, I would kind of look at like my peers and I could see what they were doing and I was seeing like the moves I was making. And it's like, oh, like they've got really big motion. Like they're focused and like I
Mhm.
have my own stuff going on too, but it's like I might in my mind like have, an idea set out for the
Mhm.
day, like this is what I want to do. But unfortunately for me, like I passed by the package store and like whereas my idea what I was gonna do, I'm like, well, I'm gonna just get a pint and I'm gonna take 2 shots. And after I take these 2 shots, then I'm gonna start working. But it's like
Mhm.
because I'm a person in long-term addiction and I've learned the way my mind works, it's like I'm not only diagnosed with alcoholism because I've had ADHD, that's mental illness. So it's like I'm dually diagnosed. So it's like these things, it's like knowing these things and how they impact your decisions and like what they can lead to becomes like super informative. Cause I know for a while, like when I was in my addiction, it would just be like, how come I can't go to lunch and have one drink? How come when someone across from me that's had a drink gets up and leaves alcohol in their cup, why is that a problem for me? Like, why am I like, I'm like, you're not gonna drink the rest of that? But it's like, that's how my
Yeah.
disease works. It's like it's always been, it's all consuming. We say in the
Mhm.
program, like one drink is too many and 1,000 is never enough.
Mhm.
And I can think of, I went to stay with a friend one time and she's like getting ready to go to work. She had a real cool corporate job. And she's like, look, girl, it's a bottle of wine here. It's some Jack Daniels, at the time, she's like, it's some weed, make yourself at home. And I remember when she came back, she's like, Lauren, you drank all the whiskey.
Oh my
You,
God.
you, you
Really?
drank all the wine. There's no more weed. And I'm like, you said make myself at home. And it's just like,
Mm.
girl, I said make yourself at home. But it's like,
What's going on?
what's up? Like, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But again, because things have been glamorized so much and everybody wants to drive the boat and do this and do that, it's kind of like, well, she said she'll buy me another one. So we just going,
Like,
get on from
yeah.
this bump. But like I said, it's so interesting being in, my
Well,
program, being able to kind of look
mhm.
back at these times and like, I'm like, yeah, like the disease was only getting more progressive. Like when I moved to Texas, it's like that's when it really picked up steam because I was able to just sit in the house all day and just,
And
for
just
lack of a
drink.
better
Were
terms,
you?
drink, go out, hang out. Like I'm not working. I don't have any like really
Mm.
parameters. I
Around.
became a dog owner, but
Mhm.
to try and give myself some
And
responsibility.
yeah, and just to wrap up, like your entire experience with alcohol and the negative effects of it. So what are some like pivotal things that happened? And I think just honestly, just give me one example, like something pivotal. I know you briefly mentioned about you talked about how there was like something along the lines of like jail was involved or something of that. Wait, what happened? Was that centered around alcoholism or
So one of the things is like I never would say like it's kind of like you remember those diagrams in school? It'd be like
like a
boom,
Venn
boom, boom,
diagram?
boom.
A Venn diagram,
But
yeah.
alcohol would always kind of be in them. It's like I can look at
Mhm.
certain arrests that I have, like disorderly conduct, you know what I'm
Mhm.
saying? Obstruction, things that I've been involved with. It's like it started around drinking, or either, I ended up in jail because someone had an open container in their car, in their car, making risky decisions and being around people because why? Like, oh, they had free drinks and I was over there drinking. And then next thing you know, it turned to this. And it's like, I can look at my life 6 years alcohol free and be like,
Amen.
these problems don't exist. Like, I don't have certain issues. Like, they just don't happen to me. It's like, I always remember my nights. Like, I can remember a time when I couldn't remember weeks at a time, chunks at a time. Like, I didn't know what happened, so it's like such a blessing to be able to still salvage what I have and, be able to give this experience, strength, and hope, because the scariest sometimes is, it's like, I kind of feel like what Harriet Tubman said. She's like, I could have freed 1,000 more slaves if only they would have known they were slaves. And like, the wildest sometimes is you'll be talking to people and they'll be telling you about how they're not experiencing these clear side effects of addiction while they're knee deep in addiction. And you never want to, it's in the program, it's all about promotion.
Wait, can we get into actually your sobriety? Like, how did you, like, what was it? What was the rock bottom moment that made you get into sobriety? And how was your sobriety? How was it, like, your journey starting off?
Rock bottom moment, I'll never forget. So when I worked the Super Bowl, I met this really cool corporate guy that worked with Mercedes-Benz. He's like, straight up, if you ever want to go to anything in that building, let me know. I'm like, anything? He said, anything. I said, oh, I would like to go to the Atlanta United game on 420. Like, I'm like, it's going to be lit. So he got me tickets, and it was not just like regular tickets. They're like in the suite, like in the Gold Wing Club. And so when I get up there, the first thing they tell me is like, it's open bar. And at one moment, it was weird because it's like I got so happy, but I got so scared at the same time because I'm like, I know how my disease is and I know how I get down. So I'm like, it's going to start out good. And I remember like sitting at the bar, like just being nervous, having like a little drink I wanted to do shots. And I remember like one of the last things I remember about that day was the bartender telling me in order for her to serve me, they were like, in order for them to keep serving me alcohol, they were going to have to put ice in my drinks. Like I couldn't get any more liquor straight. Like I had blown through that limit. And I didn't even know they had a shot limit. But apparently once you've had so much alcohol that's not like mixed with mixers or bust down with juice, like
just liability on
that. Yes. So unfortunately the friends that I had went down there with, I got separated from, and I found myself wandering around Mercedes. I'm trying to make sure I say the right name because I've been here for a long time. I found myself wandering around Mercedes-Benz, you know what I'm saying? No phone, no keys, no nothing. And luckily I was able to link up with a neighbor that I used to live near, and I was.
Wait, where were your phone and keys?
Who knows?
You lost them. So was this a blackout moment, or did you?
I want to say this was like a blackout moment. Like I remember leaving the stadium, and I remember like walking around. Like I remember just trying to find my friends. But like I told you, I'm the type that I might put my phone down, and then I remember I put it back, and it was like a lot of that was happening. Like I put it down, and I couldn't find it, and then because I'm already drunk, people are trying to help me, but I don't want their help. So, and it was like waking up the next morning at my neighbor's house, and being like, "Hey, Chris, I know last night was crazy, but you got a shot of some brown?" And him looking at me like, "Lauren, he's like, I don't know how you're gonna take this, but he's like, friend to friend, I don't think alcohol is your friend. And I think you might just want to think about how you're doing things." And it wasn't one of those things where it was like really preachy, but it was just kind of like that out. Because one of the things I've learned in the program with talking with other alcoholics is like, none of my friends ever came up to me, and no one around me was ever like, "Lauren, I think you have an issue with alcohol." Because I feel like sometimes when you decide to call attention to a problem, it's like it's going to shine a light on you. So it's like if you have issues with drinking or know somebody else with issues with drinking, when you bring up mine, it's like it's gonna highlight yours. So it becomes really reflective, and sometimes it can be a difficult subject to talk about. But I know sitting there that morning, wondering how I was going to put my life together was really a really uncomfortable feeling that I had grown really used to knowing that I didn't like. And it was like, man, like.
That was a friend. I would say that's a good friend that just says that to you because,
I was like, man, I can't keep living like this. This is so dangerous. And then like for the people that were still in my life that do care about me, like they're concerned. And it's not like, hey, we checking in. It's like, yo, like the stuff you post on Facebook is weird. Your stories make us no, because it's like you might be, half drunk trying to type something. And it's like, in my mind, I'm thinking it's looking nice and like it's not. And, I have these stories and it's like parts of stories and it's like I'm slurring the words and it's like the story, like I'm thinking the
Like, what are
story
you
look
talking
cool. And I'm like, y'all didn't like my story? They're like, Lauren, were you okay last night? It looked like you fell out your chair.
This isn't funny. I'm just like thinking about, like, he said, what's that weird stuff you're posting?
But I mean, and it was, not being the friend that they had known, but becoming like some crisis friend.
Yeah.
Like they were worried, and it was just the way some of my relationships were framed. I remember at one point in time, like I had a cousin on Facebook. We really didn't know each other too well, but she felt comfortable enough to be like, nobody told you to move out your mama's house and show your body to strangers. And it was like, that's what you think. Like, what I'm saying? Like, that's what you think. And it's so wild because sometimes it takes these moments for you to really sit and be like, I can't go out like this.
Yeah.
And then for me, unfortunately, like I started kind of losing people that I knew in addiction. And it was like, you know what? Maybe, because at this point in time, recovery wasn't even on the option. I was like, maybe I'll just do like a little detox, 30 days, just try and sober up, show myself that I can, and then, just kind of get back to work. But being in the 1 week of being in detox and really working with clinicians and kind of like going to therapy and going to my first AA meeting, I was like, wow, like this is really nice. Like these people are really listening to me and like they're telling me that my feelings are valid, and some of the stuff that I went through was like, it wasn't just stuff, like it was trauma, and they're like putting names and like titles to stuff that's happened to me, and they're like, no, you're not crazy, and like, no, like the drinking was not cool, but like there's a reason why this has happened. And from telling my story in treatment, in detox, we were able to kind of pinpoint that it was like I was already born alcoholic because my grandmother had died of cirrhosis of the liver, which is from alcoholism. And it's like, again, when we get back to these, family secrets and what we want to be accountable with and what we want to share, it's like I didn't find out this information about my grandmother from my mom till I was in rehab. And like it kind of goes back to like that feeling I felt finding out about my dad.
Yeah.
Like later on, it's like, for lack of a better term, it's like, girl, and I'm just keeping it casual, it's like, girl, if you knew your mom was an alcoholic and you see me struggling with alcohol,
you could have said something.
It would have been kind of like, or even not even that, like if we want to take it back a step further, it's like if you kind of maybe wanted to change the way my relationship with alcohol may have started, a cool conversation from the jump would have been like, I know drinking is this or that, but like the reason you never met your grandmother is because she died of alcoholism. And it's like me living my life never knowing a grandparent, it's like I don't know what that would have changed for me, but it's like it would have been nice to know a little earlier. However, all things work out in,
how it needs to. Yeah.
The Lord's timing. But again, it's been a journey.
Yeah, of course. And I think that's interesting to hear. Like alcoholism, sometimes people don't know it can run into the family, but it technically does, because it's, like you said, it's a mental health thing. And especially when you're constantly surrounded by alcohol by other people who you grew up with, it just becomes very normalized. So thank you for sharing that and highlighting that as well, in terms of your sobriety journey and how you learned that you developed alcoholism potentially just from like past traumas, and maybe your grandmother had those same things, maybe your mother even had those same things that happened too. So yeah, I'm glad that you went through sobriety. Was it like a difficult, like in short, how would you say like it was that?
I'm not gonna sugarcoat it.
Was it difficult to like?
So when you have an addiction, it's something that you've leaned on for a very, very long time. It's almost like an extension of yourself.
Yeah.
So the withdrawals, the pulling back, the whole new environment, like really having to be vulnerable. Like one of the hardest parts of my sobriety journey was not necessarily even, I don't want to say like, it wasn't necessarily the work. It was having to separate, being Lauren with a drinking problem and Chef Lauren at that point in time. Because like when I was in rehab, it wasn't like, oh, I'm this person that's doing this and this and that. It was like, no, I'm this person that has a progressive disease that needs to be treated, and we need to figure out like the best course of action so I can get my life on the track.
Exactly.
So all in all, it was very, very tough. Like it's the only way I can describe it is 75 women, Atlanta, Georgia, 3 to an apartment. Like, you know what I'm saying, walking 1 mile a day. Like it's very, very difficult. Like it's very difficult.
I've heard it's difficult, like just going, detoxing from any substance for sure.
However, I will say the lessons I learned and the values that were instilled in those walls were life-changing. Because you're able to see, people worse off than you. You're able to see people not, you know what I'm saying? It's like, it's kind of all an array. And I was lucky, like the place that I went, like they had a really strict rule about, like if you got into it with someone, you couldn't pass shame, meaning like, let's say you lost custody of your kids. That doesn't have anything to do with why you didn't wash the dishes. Like stick to the principles. And it's like learning lessons and tools like this became really important for me, like in everyday life, because there's so many times you might get into it with someone and like, you want to look at their appearance or you want to call out something that doesn't have to do with the principle when really you just need to stick to, the meat and potatoes and like really being able to strip down and like build myself up from the ground up and get to a place where, I'm able to tell my story. Because when I first got to treatment, if you would have told me like, hey, in 6 years from now, you're going to be on, Tonibryanne's YouTube telling about how your mom called you a murderer and you had a late term abortion. And I'd be like, no, I'm not going to be putting all my deepest, darkest
business out there.
You know what I'm saying? But it's like, I've learned in recovery that my experience, my strength and hope, like I never know what part of my story could touch someone. And like one of the best and most rewarding feelings is, going back to, my rehab where I got my recovery. And like I can tell someone that story about how my mom didn't want to come and get me from the hospital. And a woman looks at me and is like, I've been there too. Like I know that feeling. And like to know that it was like that pain wasn't in vain. And the things that I experienced could help somebody else. It's like it sometimes puts me in awe because, when you go through these things, you just wonder why. And you think it's so not fair. Like, it's so not fair. And, you just pray that through it all, that there's some kind of light or some kind of lesson. So to be sitting here with you now, 6 years sober, and, I still have things I go through. I'm still working on the relationship with my mom. I'm, single, not necessarily looking, but just being a young entrepreneur in Atlanta is just really, it's been an incredible blessing because I know for so long, I never thought I would be able to thank you so much. I never thought I would be able to share this with anybody, For so long, I used to drink on that shame and that guilt and that hurt. And a lot of times just that ignorance on my own part, like, how could you let this happen? And, just when you think things are getting better, you have this late term abortion and it's like, you hear things people say and it's like, you just wonder like, why? Like, is there ever going to be a silver lining? And like I said, for me, the best for me was being able to find recovery and, be able to find women that were like, hey, you may be battered, bruised, and broken, but you can still go on. Like your story, this doesn't have to be the end for you. Like you can learn to make better decisions for your life and like have a beautiful life. And like it's so wild because like if I sit and just like think about, where I am now, even just the drive over here, like in my addiction, I never thought I'd be driving. Because I was always drunk. I was always drinking. I tell you about the soccer game that we went to, but I remember like hours before that, my friends wanted to ride bird scooters. And I was like, you guys, I can't. And they're like, what do you mean you can't? And I'm like, y'all, like, you already know I've been drinking. Like, I can't. Like, I don't have the stability. And it's like to be able to look to where I am now, and like I drive my car and I've never had
Yes.
any accidents, and like I'm able to touch people with my business, and like I said, go back and share my story. It's just really a beautiful full circle moment.
And I just want to say overall, like I'm so like proud of you, and we've met before, and I think every time you're just so giving, and you're such a beautiful spirit, and I see that even on your Instagrams, we follow each other. I just love seeing where you are now, and we're gonna get into that in just a second about where you are, because you're literally the example of how yes, one thing in your life does not need to define you. And you've talked about you were dancing, you were in abusive relationships, you had to have an abortion before jail, you all these different things, and then going through sobriety and addiction, that you can still make it. And it doesn't, there's not like when you feel like it's the end, it's not the end. And even you sitting here, I know you're not crying out of pain, it's more so like, look at my life now. That is something that is so commendable, and I'm so happy for you, and I'm rooting for you. And I thank you for just being vulnerable enough to share your story, because I know it's going to impact somebody, and that's the point of what this platform is for some you to speak to someone, because maybe you telling your story is going to save somebody's life or let them know that it's okay. So I thank you for that so much.
Of course.
And I want to know, where are you now today, in terms of work? What are you doing now? And then where can people find you as we wrap up the episode? Because yeah, we had a very deep dive, and y'all want to hear more of Lauren's story, we just might have to bring her back in. But where are you now?
So now I'm living
Chef Lauren, sorry.
You fine. So now I'm living in Atlanta, Georgia. I work for an amazing catering company here in Atlanta, Bold Catering. I'm also employed with Four Seasons Hotel. I kind of do that every now and again. But I also have my own business that I'm really, really proud of. It's called Culinary Collage. I came up with the name because like I've worked in a lot of different fields. However, like it's a food-based company, but we might have a little film influence, a little this, a little that. It's always going to be something beautiful, but it's definitely not just food. So I wanted to kind of make sure that's kind of seen in the name. So we're doing strong. I was blessed early on in my business. My LLC was purchased by Pinky Cole of Slutty Vegan, which was again another just blessing.
Amen.
And it really is incredible where my sobriety has taken me, and just I'm always excited for the future.
Yeah. And how long have you been, I guess the verbiage is like alcohol free, or like how
So I've been sober. I have 6 years in May. So it's very, very exciting.
Yes, that's amazing.
It's not all, I wouldn't even say it's not been a smooth road. It's been a lot of ups and downs.
I'm sure.
Because like working in the restaurant industry, I know when I first came back, I was at work, and just kind of like how these bottles are sitting, like they were closer, and like I went to grab the bottle, and like my coworker had a bottle full of alcohol.
Oh.
And it's like, it's like at work, you wouldn't even, like, you don't even think that's going to happen. And
Crazy.
like, I feel like sometimes in your sobriety journey, you're like, oh my gosh, I consumed alcohol. What next?
Yeah.
But it's like one of the beautiful things about recovery is like we came up with like a sober execution plan. So it's like when that did happen, I was able to contact my sponsor. We were able to kind of walk through things. I was able to talk to my manager, tell them what happened. And it's like, sometimes in life, you're like, you never want to get anybody in trouble per se. But it's like if someone's already kind of partaking and making these risky decisions already, it's like, I'm not really getting you in trouble. It's like,
I'm helping you. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's like, this might be your wake up call. So I've had a lot of just different instances and experiences, but overall it's been really, really beautiful, and I'm excited to see what the future holds.
Yes. And no kids. Still no kids. No.
Still team no kids. Child free by choice, y'all.
Yes. And you're single, you mentioned. You said you're not looking, so.
Yeah, I'm just, I'm more so just working on me.
Perfect.
And becoming like the best woman I can be.
Amen. And that's all you could do, okay? And if you happen to find somebody, make sure that they're elevating you. And I'm sure you already know this. You've gone through your fair share of like dating traumas and stuff like that. And child, we all, as women, we all know it's rough out here. So if you want to be single. But where can people find you on social media?
So on social media, you can find me at, it's so wild, I've had a million. But my current Instagram name is Sugar Bunch, and then I have another personal one. It's Lorinsky. My coworker gave me that name. I don't know why.
Perfect.
But then my food
Yes.
Instagram is Culinary Collage.
Perfect.
So and I'll type it for you so you can put it at the bottom or however you want.
Yes, of course.
Do it in post.
Yes.
Everybody's so cool.
Well, thank you so much, Lauren, for coming on and sharing your story. Once again, I told you, like, it's a very inspiring story. I know you're going to impact somebody just from sharing it and just being vulnerable. So I thank you. This was like a wonderful episode. I'm so glad that we were able to speak about this, hear more about alcoholism, because I didn't really know much. Like, because of you, I went and Googled. I'm like, not Googled, but I went on TikTok, RIP TikTok. It's probably going to be gone by the time this airs. But I was like, I want to hear other people that have gone through it before me and you met. But just thank you for your vulnerability. And
I appreciate you for your platform, Tony.
Yes.
B, with the two bling.
Yes,
I'm living for it.
I'm being a little rebel right now. But thank you guys. Thank you so much for watching this episode of the Decision Podcast. And I look forward to seeing you guys in the next one. Bye guys. Thank you for watching.